Hi, I'm Igor Smirnov. Today I'd like to show you the 3 games that won the recent Game Festival, which has just finished on our website of the Remote Chess Academy. The good thing about these games is that they are played not by Carlsen or any other top grandmaster, but by ordinary chess players, just like you. Therefore, you can learn some useful ideas from these games, and you can also get warned against some typical errors. Without further ado, let's get started. Here's the first game played by our student as Black against Azmaybarashvili, the well-known Georgian grandmaster. He even won the European chess champion once. I think his top rating is around 2700s, therefore he's a really strong grandmaster. Anyway, let's see what happens. Azmaybarashvili started the game by playing g4. Certainly it's a bit ridiculous move. Perhaps he underestimated his opponent, thought that he can play anything against an amateur player, but he will regret about that decision soon. Anyway, just as a general note, in an opening you should strive to play in the center, aiming your pieces there and avoid flank operations without any big reason. So g4 is certainly not the best move here. There followed e5, bishop g2, knight e7. Black is going to exploit the weak squares created by the first white's move g4. h3. Another dubious move, I have to say. In an opening you need to develop your pieces, and therefore pawn moves, when they have no big reason behind it, are just a time wasting. Black played knight g6, the move he intended to play, and white answered d4. This move makes some sense, although after the exchange of the central pawns, white has to expose his queen, which is not advised to do in an opening, because your opponent can gain extra tempos while chasing that early developed queen. That happened in the game. Black answered knight c6, attacking the queen, and white already experiencing some serious troubles. Anyway, he retreated with queen d2. There followed bishop c5, simple development, castling, and b3. Here you can see that Azmaybarashvili makes the same mistake once again. He makes another pawn move instead of immediate development. Instead of playing b3, white could have played knight f3 and tried to remove his king to safety quickly. b3 certainly does make sense. White is trying to fianchetto his bishop, but it's too slow, especially considering the fact that white has already delayed his development quite a lot during the previous moves. This is clearly Azmaybarashvili's off day, as he made a lot of mistakes in the very early opening stage. Anyway, you can see that even strong grandmasters make those mistakes. Therefore, certainly you should be careful and you should very accurately think of what to do in an opening stage. Taking into account white's numerous mistakes, it's time for black to start being more aggressive and execute the white's inaccuracies. How do you think? How should black proceed here? You may think about that for a second, and then we'll see the game continuation. In the game, black made very good choice of his attacking moves. He started with knight h4, attacking white's bishop. By the way, this move wouldn't be possible if white would play knight f3 on the previous move. Well, actually, black could have played knight h4 anyway, but it wouldn't have such a big power. In the game, white had to retreat. He played bishop e4. Black followed with queen to f6, hitting the f2 square and continuing his aggressive operations. White played e3 to close the diagonal. And here black made another brilliant move, which follows one of the key ideas of the attack. But first of all, I'll give you a second to think about it. How would you play here as black? It's especially great that the student found this move during a blitz game. It means that he didn't have enough time to calculate all the variations precisely, but he simply followed the rules that he knew, and that brought him great results. He played d5. The idea behind this move is that when you're ahead in development and want to start the attack, you need to open the files. Then your pieces will be able to use those open files to attack the opponent's position directly. This is exactly what happened in the actual game. White took with the bishop. That's the only way for white, otherwise he'll lose the material immediately. Black answered bishop b4, pinning the knight. White is forced to reply bishop b2, and now bishop e6. That's another good thing to pay attention on. While attacking, you shouldn't forget about your reserves. You need to bring up all the pieces that you have into play. That will increase the power of your assault significantly. This is exactly what black is doing here. At the moment, white struggles to cover all his weaknesses along these diagonals and the new open d file, and to protect all of his pieces. For example, white doesn't have time to castle right now, just because obviously black will win the piece. It can first take the bishop, and after that grab the knight, which left behind. Let's go back to the actual game. In the game, white took the bishop, the most natural move, hoping to make castle on the next move. But here comes another surprise, a very impressive move, rook a to d8. Black keeps playing in the same style by bringing up more and more pieces into the attack with his every move. It's especially great if you can bring more pieces into the attack while keep attacking your opponent. In this case, your opponent does not have time to defend and to develop his own pieces. Therefore, it will ensure your total domination. In this position, actually, white already can resign. The queen cannot go away because black will simply take the knight. Instead, white played bishop d5, trying to block the line, but black answered with another impressive move, rook takes d5, just destroying the white's position completely. Now, after the forced move queen takes, black captures the knight, attacking the white's king and also the white's pieces on the queen side. White can't really take the bishop because after that he will lose the rook in the corner. It's quite noticeable that most of the white's pieces are still dozing on their initial positions on the first rank, and that's why white is defenseless. Anyway, let's come back to the game. White played king to e2, black took the bishop, rook d1, and here black brought the last piece into the attack by playing rook to e8. Here white played knight to f3, which is a bad move, but it's not that easy to find a good alternative. Here you can again think for a second, and you can check if you can spot the winning tactics for black. Hopefully you were able to find it. It starts with knight takes f3 followed by knight d4, exploiting the fork and also the pin along the e file. Now white has to give up the exchange, therefore black ends up with an extra piece and he's totally winning. This is an incredible game that illustrates some opening rules that we discussed throughout this game. Also, it shows how you can exploit opponent's mistakes in case he violates those opening rules, and how you should start and deliver your attack. One more thing that I'd like to highlight here is the fact that black simply followed the rules that he knew, and that was enough to overcome one of the top grandmasters. What I mean to say here is that if you know the right principles, then you can follow them and you can score similar brilliant victories, even against really strong opponents. Here's the next game that got the second place in our competition. I don't show you the whole game. You can find the complete annotated game by following the link below the video. Here we can pay attention to the moment, which is very similar to the game that we have just observed. White is certainly superior. He has greater activity, and the black's rook stuck in the corner, which is one of the key factors of this position, because black is almost like playing without this rook. Therefore, it is time for white to start his attack. Of course, there are different ways for white to do that. You can think for a moment about that yourself and try to find the way that you would use if you're playing this as white. By the way, you should be careful. For example, if you play knight c5 here, black has the trick with bishop takes a2. And if you take the bishop, black is going to play queen a5 and take the knight back. I'm not saying it's very dangerous for white, but anyway, that's a sudden trick, and you need to be prepared. Let's go back. In the game, white played f5. I hope you can see a similarity between these two games that we observed now. White is sacrificing a pawn to open the lines, to utilize his greater activity, and to start the direct attack against black's king. Although, to be honest, black could have put great resistance by not accepting that pawn, but took in the knight and then taking the pawn on the e5 to keep the lines closed. And here it would be not that easy for white to break through. So, honestly speaking, probably it was better for white to prepare the f5 breakthrough. Maybe play rook d6 first, like that, and on the next move push f5. But anyway, the idea itself is very good and instructive. So I'm still glad that white played it, actually. It just shows the good understanding of the situation of the white player. In the game, black simply took the pawn, knight f5, and now you can see what happens. White has the new open file against the black's king, so white puts the rook with a tempo against the black's monarch. Black has to retreat with the bishop. He played bishop e6. Now rook d6. Another piece invaded black's territory and started the attack. This time white is threatening to take the bishop using the pin. Black removed the king from the pin, and white played queen to f2, threatening queen f6 with queen takes h8 afterwards. As you can see, white is attacking by his every move, and therefore black has no time for defense or for regrouping his pieces. Black just played rook g8 to remove the rook from the danger. White played queen f6, king e8, and rook takes e6. As you can see, the black's position was completely destroyed, and now in case black takes, it's obviously that white takes the pawn and then wins the rook and the game. This was another good example of an attack. Please remember the idea of sacrificing a pawn in order to open the lines and use the power of your more active position. As we have seen in this game, after that pawn sacrifice, white won the game very easily without any counter chances. This game got the third place in our game festival. In the previous two games that we have just analyzed, we have seen how to use your greater activity in order to start an attack. The question you may have now is how to get that advantage in activity. Of course, since you have the same quantity of pieces compared to your opponent, it's not that easy to do so. But you can get the temporary advantage in activity on a certain side of the board. In order to do so, you need to eliminate opponent's defenders of that area and also to bring your own pieces methodically closer to that area. Once you have the strong enough concentration of the forces, the decisive attack will come naturally. Let's see how white realized this plan in this game. He started by playing g4 to drive away the black's knight, which is currently controlling a lot of important squares on the king side. Black answered knight h4, so the knights were traded, same as the rooks. It's always useful to exchange opponent's defenders. After bishop takes h4, white played another good move. As we discussed before, it's especially great if you can bring your pieces into the attack while making attacking moves. Here white can achieve this by playing queen h3. It creates a bit sudden threat of g5, and after that, if black grabs the pawn, white will reach the king. Therefore black has to defend, therefore wasting some time. After g6, white played bishop e3, developing one more piece. It seems like bishop h6 would be more active, but anyway, bishop e3 is probably good enough. Black played bishop g5, and perhaps he was worrying about that bishop standing under the attack of the queen, and white answered rook f1, bringing the last piece into the attack. Now you can see that if you pay attention solely on the king side, then you will notice the much greater activity of the white's pieces there. Almost all of the white's pieces, except for the knight, are targeting this area, while as for black, most of his pieces are concentrated on the queen side. This is the good sign of a powerful attack for white. However, black doesn't feel the danger and plays a5. Probably he's preparing knight b4 move to trade off some pieces and start his own plan on the queen side. It's a good idea in general, but again, black somewhat abandoned the king side. Can you see the way for white to exploit black's weaknesses? Yes, that's the interesting move rook to f7. It is a relatively typical sacrificing idea to uncover the black's king and then to checkmate it. If black takes the rook, there follows queen to f7, and then black can't do much because in the next moves he'll be mated pretty soon, for example in the line king f8. Then bishop takes g6, now he is threatening queen f7 mate, and if black goes like bishop e8 or queen e7, it doesn't matter, then queen h8 and queen g7 mate. In the actual game, black refused to take the rook and played bishop h4 instead to cover the h-file. But now white has another tactics. It's rook takes d7, deflecting the queen, and now white has two mana pieces for the rook, which gives him the material advantage, while he still has the powerful attack against black's weak king. White is going to play something like bishop h6, queen f6, and it's over. In this game you have seen a good example of how to get the more active position. You need to target a certain area, eliminate opponent's defenders of this area, and try to bring up your forces closer to this location methodically, while at the same time making attacking moves. If you can do it like that, in a middle game you will be able to develop the very strong attack and to crush your opponent. Now let's summarize the key takeaways from the games we just observed. In the first game of Azmai-Perashvili, we have seen a couple of typical opening errors. This is what you should not do while playing the opening stage. First of all, do not make too many pawn moves in an opening. You need to develop your pieces. Secondly, playing on the flank is a bad idea because central squares have the greatest importance. Therefore, you should play there. Thirdly, early development of your queen is not recommended. it will be attacked by your opponent, who will gain extra temples for development of his BCs. Finally, delaying your castling is not a good idea. Although some strong grandmasters do that in order to realize his plan, in very most of the cases it is a dubious idea that can cost you the game, simply because it is too dangerous to leave your king in the center of the board for a too long time. It's quite funny that Asmai violated all those rules within one short game. He is still the great player, it was clearly his off day. Anyway, the lesson you can learn here is that although these rules seem to be beginner level rules, you should never forget about them. It's very important for you to follow them in every game that you play. Next, let's come to the few important rules that we have seen about the attack. How to start the attack and how to deliver the successful attack. Attack is the main way to win the game, that's why you should definitely master it. First of all, in order to start the successful attack, you need to have advantage in activity. In order to obtain that advantage, you need to bring up your reserves. Concentrate your pieces on a certain area of the board. Eliminate opponent's defenders. It is especially great if you can bring up your reserves while at the same time attacking your opponent. In this case, he will have no time for defense or for development of his own pieces. Once you got the advantage in activity, you need to break through. One of the most typical ways to do that is to make a pawn sacrifice to open the lines, which will enable your pieces to penetrate into the opponent's possession and to start the direct assault. Finally, let me thank you for your participation. Because of you, we were able to conduct this great event and learn some useful things while having fun along the way. My congratulations to the winners of this competition. I'm sure you will enjoy your prizes. Also, I was very happy to see the high quality games played by you and also the very well thought annotations written by you. If you didn't win the prize this time, please don't be upset. In any case, the fact that you analyzed and annotated your game will be very helpful for your chess development. Thanks again. If you have any impressions or feedback about the Game Festival, feel free to write them below in the comments area. Let me remind you once again that if you wish to observe the full commented games that I show you today, you can follow the link below the video and find them there. Thanks again, and talk to you in the next videos.